I'm about to end this man's whole career.
What's up, brosif? So recently, Joel Seedman and Mike Israetel had a debate on squats. Now, it wasn't really a debate. It was more Mike asking Joel Seedman questions and then Joel Seedman embarrassing himself.
We're just adding to that by giving them a therapeutic stimulus to make sure their muscles are stronger and more resilient.
Do you consider your training therapeutic and not ergogenic then?
Process, get huge and nasty, 100%.
What I wanted to focus on was not the squat aspect of things. I think there's enough evidence that he is wrong that it's not even worth delving into. Half squats, quarter squats have their place, but to think that you shouldn't go beyond 90 degrees or it causes inflammation or injury or anything like that, that has been debunked very, very thoroughly. Instead, what I want to focus on is how to spot a fitness charlatan. How to identify people like him so you can protect yourself. And first of all, I want to say props to Joel Seedman for even doing this, especially on short notice. I don't think he defended himself particularly well or justified his practices whatsoever, but at least he agreed to do it. Maybe he wasn't familiar with how much of a savage verbal connoisseur Mike Israetel is, or how much he is in favor of using full range of motion for most types of exercise, but either way, he got bodied. Now, the first way to spot a fitness charlatan is if they're saying something is new, something is revolutionary, if they're saying that everything else is wrong and I am right, if they claim to have discovered something that will be a game changer. 99% of the time, if not 99.9% of the time, it is just marketing. It is bullshit. It is a way to get you to buy into their system.
So one of the things there, so first off with the captions, like you have, 2 seconds to catch people's attention. So yes, some of that is like, hey, I can't give a ton of context because it's Instagram, right? Okay. So it doesn't give me a chance to fully explain everything. I have to put up kind of like the quick thing that's going to get people's attention.
And not market basic, well-known information, even if that basic, well-known information is the best and the most effective stuff to do.
If I just posted deadlift, squat, bench, and even though we do a lot of those, and that makes up a stronger majority of my training than just unstable versions, I'd probably get a quarter of the people looking at my things. My reach, my potential to impact people's lives with what I believe are helpful methods, it would be less.
So, I totally understand. Yeah, having a big following is important.
The dunk itself is ridiculous, but
Joel Seedman
stays on the ground so long that I literally thought he died.
And we're talking about a path that millions of people have walked down, and then you have one guy who's like, by the way, we should go this way instead. It's more effective, more efficient. Do you think that millions of people haven't looked into this, haven't tried it, haven't discovered it? No one else has brought this to light. Out of hundreds and thousands of years of people exercising, no one thought to go this way? What is more likely? It's actually new, or it's not new. People have done it and they discarded it because it's crap. Anyone can put a fucking transformer bar on their back and a trap bar in their hands and do squats. Okay, this is nothing revolutionary or hyper effective. It is just creative. But that doesn't mean it's going to be better. Next, evidence. There's a lot of scientific evidence out there. Some of it says this, some of it says this. Often these two things are complete opposites. And this is part of the reason why fitness can be very confusing.
Clinical experience. And then just, like we said, we went back and forth on some of the science because there's flip sides to every side of the science. As you know, you have, whether it's, the ketone diet, paleo diet, whether anything we talk about in the sports industry, there's always two sides of it. One side says this, the other side says this. So I think you can look at the research, and there's probably research supporting both sides.
However, you have to look at the totality of the evidence. So if the vast majority of studies say that full range of motion is better, especially for lower body, and a few studies under some circumstances say that partial range of motion is better, that doesn't mean that partial range of motion is better. That doesn't mean you can say, oh, well, we don't know. We do know. And so often these people will cherry pick studies. They'll find these few studies that support their position, and they will only use these, and they will ignore everything that doesn't support their position. This is bad science. Okay, you have this theory, and you look for information to confirm this theory. It's called confirmation bias. And if you're selling a system, if there's money that comes into the equation, and your system relies on a certain theory, often people will only look for information that confirms that theory. Happens all the time. Next, they will rely heavily on anecdote. Now, there's nothing wrong with anecdote as long as you realize it's n equals 1, or n equals a few, or it's not really controlled at all. So just because you say, oh, I have a certain athlete who successfully used this method, that doesn't mean this method is going to be good or better than anything else, especially when we're talking about elite athletes. A lot of coaches, they will use who they coached as evidence that their techniques work. But it doesn't show that this person would not have gotten better results with something else, especially if what you're doing is eye-catching or weird or unique or revolutionary. You don't know that it's actually more effective. And yes, maybe this athlete performs well, but they're already an elite athlete. Show me the guy who goes from average to savage, not from savage to still savage. Next, they might say things that really just don't make sense at all. For example, Mike Israetel was talking about the loaded stretch being an independent cause of hypertrophy. And then Joel Seedman was like, well, you can get a stretch at 90 degrees from a half squat.
So I'm not opposed to stretch. I'm just opposed to excessive stretch, because what I'm saying is that when you do a proper 90-degree position, the muscles are actually very stretched. Biomechanically, it may look, or visually, it may not look that deep, but the muscle fibers themselves are really lengthened because we're creating so much active tension.
But from that point on, he's been on my list. Now look at my, really? Oh, so that's how you're gonna play it? I said, it's a crock of shit. That's all I needed. That's all I needed for him to do that, and it became personal with me.
Seriously? Next, pay attention to how they actually speak. Okay, one thing is that they will use jargon. So jargon is extremely technical language that is not designed to enhance communication. That should be how you use language, right? To try to communicate. Not these people. They use it to make themselves seem smarter than they actually are.
You have, whether it's,
or to make the topic seem more complicated than it actually is. And if you look at Joel Seedman's captions, it's a shit show. I can understand it, but I'm sure a lot of people who don't have a background in fitness are reading through this and they're just like, what the actual fuck am I reading? And that is by design. He specifically does that so that you get his book because you think, oh, well, if I don't understand this, I must be missing out on something. But probably not. Next, they will be purposefully vague. So, for example, in this debate, which was more of a dismantling than an actual debate, Joel Seedman, he must have used the word inflammation a dozen times. Maybe I'll make a montage.
Inflammatory response is pain, a lot of inflammation in addition where it produces inflammation. So inflammatory response.
Now, it's difficult to actually pin down someone using this word. Yes, you can quantify inflammation in terms of your biomarkers, in terms of your blood work, but most people will never do that. So they just hear inflammation, full range of motion, and they freak out, and thus they run into the arms of Joel Seedman, hopefully buying his book. Next, there isn't a huge amount of nuance with a lot of charlatans, and this actually leads often to a cult following. You look at some of these guys, I'm not going to name names, but I will have a full video on it at some point. They have a cult-like following, which is not really open to other information. They follow their leader and they trust their leader absolutely. But nuance is extremely important because there is not just the way of doing things. There are many ways of doing things, but you can't really sell many things as effectively. People don't want many answers. They want the answer. They just want to be told what to think. And it's sad because you see these people in this bubble and you want to help them. But if you try to help them, they get fucking pissed at you. And Seedman is in a difficult position because he says that 80% of what he does is the tried and true basic movements. But 99.9% of his Instagram is this circus trick bullshit. And so what does he do? Does he say, oh, I use only these weird methods? He can't say that because then it shows that he's an ineffective coach. So he says, okay, well, this is just what I put on my Instagram. And in reality, this is only a small part of what I do. And he said, I need to do a better job of curating his Instagram content.
The best ways to make sure individuals are ready for extreme positions is make sure the muscles and the tissues are healthy in general. They're not inflamed. The muscles are able to absorb force, so that if they are caught off guard and have to get into a more extreme position, their muscles are healthy, their tissues are healthy, they're not inflamed, their body's not sending inhibitory signals because there's so much pain and discomfort. It's like if somebody gets put in like an arm position where, and again, I'm not a martial arts expert, but if they get put into a certain position and that shoulder has been, inflamed and tight from just, doing excessive range of motion, maybe like on bench press for some reason, okay? If they get put in that position, their body's probably going to shut it down even more. They're going to have no strength there. Whereas if the tissues are healthy and they get put in that position, they'll probably have better ability to absorb force.
And he straight up admitted that he does this for views. And I guess kudos to him for being honest about being a piece of shit. But being self-aware does not excuse anyone from anything. And I feel really bad for his athletes. I really do. Because I don't know if they genuinely believe this or they don't, but they sure as hell don't realize that he's just taking advantage of them. And that is really fucking sad. And as a coach, you really should not be doing that. You should not take advantage of your client to push your bullshit to get attention, acclaim, and money. Fuck that. Next, censorship. Now, if you look at his page, it's probably 98 to 99% positive stuff, despite the ridiculous variations and just lack of evidence for his claims. It's because he's deleting a lot of the bad comments. Now, I have blocked people, but the vast majority of the time, I let comments through the YouTube filter, even if they're nasty, even if they're mean, even if they're saying mean things about me, even if they're disagreeing with me, because I think it's dangerous to have censorship excessively on your page. So just be careful out there. Be inherently skeptical, especially if someone is promising a lot or if they're doing something way different from everyone else. Because odds are they're probably just using it for attention or as marketing or to push product. And ideally, you should be getting a wide variety of sources of information when it comes to your fitness information, not just one. I've actually had people tell me, Geoff, I unfollowed all other sources of fitness information except for you. And my reaction is not like, yes, one step closer to ultimate power. No, my reaction is, well, that's kind of dumb. All right, that is all for this video. Like, subscribe, share, notifications, grab my book, which is actually reasonable as well as reasonably priced. And I will see you in the next video. Peace.
Boom, bam, bop, bada bop, boom, pow.